I'm going to go over and hand it over to our presenters who are going to walk us through unmasking the blind spot, why API security is the weak link in automotive cybersecurity. So with that, I'll hand it on over to Fabian Stahl and Dr. Matthias Lenk, who is a senior product manager and our sales engineering managers, respectively.
Yes, and hello. Big thank you to Auto ISAC for this great opportunity to present this highly relevant topic. And thank you to the audience for your interest in our talk, why API security is the weak link in automotive cybersecurity. My name is Dr. Matthias Lenk, based in Germany, sales engineering manager for EMEA, and I'm here with Fabian Stahl.
Yes, Fabian Stahl. I'm a customer success manager here at Upstream, based out of Sweden.
Perfect, then let's kick it off. First, let me introduce our company. So we are a cloud-based automotive data analytics platform and service provider. Today, we monitor over 30 million connected devices worldwide, provide actionable insights to the many OEMs that we work with. The monitored devices are mainly passenger or commercial vehicles, but the list also includes smart mobility IoT devices, such as EV charging stations. While our focus has traditionally been on cybersecurity, we've recently expanded into the domain of vehicle health or quality analytics. Overall, our customers use our data management platform, our dedicated cyber threat intelligence services, also in combination with our operation center services with automotive data experts. Now, let me introduce the topic. So we live in a highly connected world with plenty of distributed systems in the smart mobility ecosystem, also with very complex and safety-critical IoT devices that we call cars. That implicates an according machine-to-machine communication and traffic increase via different protocols, and first and foremost, APIs for all kinds of smart mobility services. Now, these headlines all tell the same story. Already a single weak API can let attackers jump from within to full remote control across multiple OEMs. And besides those well-known and publicly reported incidents, we will present more recent cases, but bottom line is clear. Attackers will look for the easiest way to hack organizations to maximize ROI. And while typical vulnerabilities are very fundamental, organizations fail to recognize attacks early in time. So the key statements here are API vulnerabilities are industry-wide and not brand-specific. Second, public exploits breach vehicle control functionalities, such as remote unlock or engine start. And third, high media attention impacts reputational stakes. And Fabian, can you please provide maybe a more structured insight for those incidents via numbers and statistics?
Of course. And at Upstream, one of the services that we offer is a cyber threat intelligence, which is dedicated to the automotive industry. And a notable result from this service is our yearly global automotive cybersecurity report that concludes these trends and statistics. So I'll highlight, if you don't have a version of this year's report, we will share a link in a digital booth afterwards. And also, if you would be interested to have a dedicated presentation of the report, the full 160 pages, we're more than happy to arrange such a session. So feel free to reach out to either me or Matthias for this. And also, to keep you curious, just around the corner, we will soon release our H1 report with a new interesting topic to see. But looking at the statistic then, as we saw in the 2025 report, the attacks on APIs and telematics has risen significantly. And telematics and API layers together, they account for nearly 60% of the automotive cybersecurity incidents today. And they are deeply connected, because every telematics command, it's just an API call in disguise. So real protection demands that we understand both the signal and the pipe that carries it. And if we focus on the complex threat landscape that API communication and why the expanding API interconnectivity increases cyber risks. So if we take a look at this spider web, a single vehicle talks to 10 plus API domains. We have the mobile app, we have a dealer portal, auto update cloud, payment gateway, etc. The list goes on, right? And each connection is a live API session. And in an organization, there are millions of API transactions. It's happening for thousands of APIs, and every edge is a potential breach path. And if we look in the right-hand corner of the slide, you can see how a typical attack on the business logic looks like. Because behind those API transactions, the attacker followed the industry business logics, and then the attack are compromised by multiple hops that can take up to weeks. And we will later on in the presentation exemplify a little bit more on this as well. So what do we see in the real world from working with our customers? We have analyzed the API incidents that our VSOC team has worked on during the last years. We can see the attack categories on the left side of the slide, where vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and misconfigurations are the top one with 43% of all the attacks. We also have the automotive business logic level attacks at 13% and application infrastructure level attacks at 8%, and also a big chunk of abuse and fraud attempts at 36%. But the vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and misconfiguration is definitely the top one. And on the right side of the slide, we have broken down the category to the different attack methods. So we can see that it's clearly that unauthenticated API calls stand out, because it's more than 80% of all those attacks come with this attack method. Okay, so now we've covered a little bit on API attack categories, attack methods. But Matthias, what are we missing here?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Fabian. So far, we have understood the complexity of the ecosystem for services and accordingly of APIs. And if you look at cars as extremely complex and safety critical IoT devices, whereas communication involves multiple data streams and data sources, including telematics, backend systems, and services. And now here's the hard truth, that most automakers and suppliers still treat API traffic and vehicle data as two separate worlds, as they also originate from different departments or subsidiaries or suppliers. And of course, OEMs do typically not map how each API call may manipulate vehicle functions. So OEMs miss basic security controls like authorization checks or rate limits, but this is right where the attackers strike first, as we will see. In short, the fusion of the security measures for car-related data like telematics together with API-based services and controls is mandatory to achieve strong cybersecurity. Unfortunately, we see already a trend that OEMs address this gap, and now this needs to be brought into general practice, or otherwise we will continuously see according impacts. And Fabian, can you please walk us through the impacts that also may result from a disconnect of this data fusion?
Yes. And that's why should you care? The risk of doing nothing, of course, is the main thing. And we will highlight some examples of what have happened recently in the industry. The first one here we see is an example where there's a massive data breach that took place during this year, where both vehicle and contact information was made available by the threat actors. And how does this happen? Well, a no-auth actuator leaked access tokens and passwords. The attackers could from there search any VIN number, retrieve the live location of the vehicle, and also retrieve the vehicle data. Because data from more than 800,000 vehicles was made public from this breach, and of course with according impact on both reputation and fines. Another example is this one, where an endpoint was open without any authentication or rate limit, which gave the attacker a free flow to search with a VIN number. It could retrieve the vehicle's owner details and also the full service history of the vehicle. And the lesson learned here is that a mobile companion app can ship insecure backend APIs, which ultimately puts the whole fleet at risk And again, big impact on reputation and privacy. And a final example is a very famous number plate hack that allowed the researchers to take control over vehicles by just scanning the license plate. This was an incident that was based on application logics, and both APIs and telematics were exploited. Matthias, maybe you can walk us through one of these in more detail.
Absolutely. So let's deconstruct one of those recent examples and divide the attack into categories, Fabian, that you mentioned before from our real world VSOC perspective. So each of those recent examples, like leaked data from 800K cars and drivers data, is comprised of multiple steps and typically begins with application infrastructure attacks that we see on the left side and that we call the API reconnaissance phase. In the second phase, this expands via API vulnerabilities or weaknesses and misconfigurations to the phase of initial API access. And eventually, the incident then also involves business logic attacks that led to the actual data leakage. And during each of those phases, there appear anomalies in the data traffic that can be detected. So for example, in the first phase, API rate limits exceed expectations, or as attackers tend to mask themselves, we could see spikes of recording network origins. For the second phase, we can see indicators such as unauthenticated API calls, which was, Fabian, one of the top symptoms from your statistics that you presented. And here we can also detect access to classified sensitive endpoints that should not be exposed. Or when analyzing the transaction data, we can realize that there is an excessive amount of PII data in responses. Last but not least, when API transactions and telematics data gets fused, we could also detect anomalies like IP to vehicle location anomalies. So far, we looked at the problem space, the impacts, and with this slide, we also showed that it's possible to understand signatures and anomalies of those attacks. Well, Fabian, now what do we do with that knowledge? Because, of course, we want to mitigate and to respond, right?
We surely do. And the next steps here now is to look into some best practices and mitigation strategies. And we have built this on 6 different topics. As you can see here, we have visibility first, we have the integrated ecosystem, mastering the fundamentals, continuous refinement, standardized API security practices, and finally, practical AI and machine learning adoption. So let's look into the different steps. Number 1 is visibility first. You can't protect what you don't see, right? And what is very important here is that you maintain accurate inventory of your APIs, vehicles, and consumers. And one way to do this is to upload your API documentation, like your Swagger files, GraphQL, etc., to first analyze if there are any sensitive endpoints, and then also later compare the actual API transactions and if they comply with what you have documented. And here, based from our experience working with the customers, this is usually where we have the first big aha moment. And you should then make sure to classify your APIs clearly and continuously monitor the behaviors. You need to classify your endpoints, the parameters, and sensitive fields. And for example, a certain API evolves over time. Your developer can introduce a new endpoint that was not part of the original API purpose and therefore might not even be documented at all or correctly classified according to the data privacy measures. And the second step is then the integrated ecosystem. As we've seen in the examples that we've shared before, it's super important to look at both the APIs and the telematics data. And that's exactly what we do. We fuse the telematics data and the APIs into our stateful digital twin. And this is where we keep a digital copy for each vehicle, each API, and each consumer that are all referenced to each other. And we do this to achieve this comprehensive context-aware security. So Matthias, what do we do now when we have the data structured?
Yes. So as of now, we have a reliable data structure, and therefore we can start with the data analysis. So here, the recommendation is to start with the fundamentals and then work in increments. We've seen that most attackers leverage vulnerabilities and weaknesses like sensitive data endpoints or Ebola attacks that can be detected via data classification or object enumerations. So here, fundamental, for example, addresses the discovery and classification of APIs and their endpoints from API documentations, Fabian, as you mentioned, like Swagger or GraphQL, but also comparing if the live traffic complies with the assumptions from those documentations or if they're potentially shadow or zombie APIs. Another example for fundamentals also refers to the coverage of the OWASP top 10 API risks, which should be included there in this phase. And if you remember, the goal is always to mitigate and to respond to API attacks, which requires an immediate understanding of a series of the relevant events that adhere to a potential incident, and an understanding within the context. This context involves the attacker, who might exploit a couple of APIs or endpoints over a longer period. And as shown before, the context also includes vehicle and telematics, fusing and presenting the relevant information, also inferred information, out of a huge bunch of data points is crucial to quickly understand the attack to react. And this is where our digital twin technology actually provides the structure to generate those valuable insights and also profiles. Then step number 4, after the first 3 takeaways that were visibility, data fusion, and fundamental detections, we then refine and extend the coverage. So now an organization is coming into an advanced stage and can already leverage on previous achievements and therefore move forward very systematically, for example, by optimizing detection logic, tune false positives or thresholds, purple teaming, table talk exercises, etc. Next step then is to feed back the security measures to the development of the APIs, so by considering aspects like data fusion or attack categories. An initiative here can be to standardize on policies like classification of APIs, endpoints, and parameters for data privacy or sensitivity. Another outcome can be to reconsider approaches to how to specify or document the APIs or for the development and maintenance of APIs and according workflows or KPIs behind the processes. The step 5 therefore enables an organization for a long-term risk reduction. And step number 6 now leverages on AI and machine learning and is currently being adopted by the industry for cybersecurity. We also experience this adoption within our client base. The clear benefits are fast investigations, obviously supported by a more natural language interface. But AI also addresses the guided creation of new detection capabilities for tomorrow's attack scenarios. And with that, we want to conclude our presentation and summarize the key aspects. So we address different API attack categories and multiple phases like exploits of API weaknesses, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and looked at infrastructure and business logic attacks. We explained the relevance of telematics and API data fusion for context awareness and the well-structured digital twin, to eventually gain visibility to implement fundamentals and detect anomalies caused by attacks for their mitigation. We want to say thank you once again to Auto ISAC and of course to the audience for your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. We do have a couple questions that have come through, so I'll start with the very first one. API security seems to be a general topic for different industries. Would you address industries other than OEMs or automotive with API security?
So first, yes, that's right. So Upstream, we have our core competences in cybersecurity for automotive. And the added value for existing OEM clients comes from the fusion of vehicle-related data with APIs. But because of the importance of API transactions, this API monitoring can also be a standalone solution. So now what is the scope? So therefore, we also consider APIs from enterprise IT, from automotive industries as highly relevant. And we also look at smart mobility in general, like large dealerships or platform operators to resell used cars, or the domain of EV charging or charge point operators. But the short answer would be is that for API security, we look at smart mobility and IoT, which are huge domains.
Well said. Our second question. Imagine I am in charge of cybersecurity in a large automotive organization. This may involve complex challenges such as multiple development departments or service departments that are involved. More likely, I don't even know the stakeholders, the tech stack, or the heterogeneous environment in general. From a practical perspective, how should I start an API security initiative?
Yeah, Fabian, I take that one, or?
Yeah, go for it. That's a good question.
Yeah, good question. So actually, that's a practical question indeed. Yes. So those initiatives ideally arise from awareness of the risk. Like we also create awareness in this forum throughout the week, and it would be less ideal to learn from an impact from a newspaper article, right? So, however, the conditions are that you described, they are really realistic, and therefore, they align with our experiences where security managers or CISOs actually find themselves confronted to broaden the scope to API security, potentially under pressure. So if you recall the steps, to start with visibility first, here a stakeholder should begin with identifying the most important services, so like the crown jewels of the services, and even if available, potentially the numbers from API transactions for those services can support the identification process to shorten the time to value in the end. And in general, working in increments is best practices to leverage the discovery, like from first identified vulnerabilities or classifications via API documentations. And when doing so, we experience a steep learning curve in organizations, so in our clients, especially when we start comparing the actual API traffic to the expectations from the given documentations. So when we uncover shadow or SOP APIs. So, and last but not least, when our clients master the fundamentals, and they already had a couple of those, Fabian, how you called it, aha moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Very well said. Well, I don't seem to have any other questions coming through in the chat. You guys do have about 5 minutes. Are there any other parting words you'd like to leave with our audience?
Oh, I think from my side, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. So thank you.
Yes, thank you one more time and enjoy the rest of the sessions.